And I'm sure that you all must have seen the agenda. The next part that we talk about is going to talk about global capital, local change, rethinking value creation. I genuinely believe, ladies and gentlemen, that capital today is moving faster than anything. It's going beyond boundaries, it's going beyond borders, it's talking about markets, it's also going beyond economies. But I think the real question lies that does global capital is really creating a local change? And is it really bringing a local impact? And if you all have also thought about it, and if you are also pondering about this question, that is the change bringing the real change is happening in the local level, on the grassroots level, this particular session and this fireside chat is going to give you the answer to that particular question. Because I believe that the true value is not just about creating numbers in the balance sheet, but it's really about creating the real impact in the communities and the people we are serving. So now, without any further ado, it's time that we move on to the next session. That's Global Capital, Local Change, Rethinking Value Creation. And for this, I would first like to invite our moderator on stage, Ms. Anita Manwani, President of TiE Silicon Valley. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it up for her. A big warm welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us here on the stage. I'm sure that this particular session is going to give us a great insight on how we can rethink on value creation. I would now like to request our host to welcome our speaker here on stage, Mr. Ashish Dhawan, founder and CEO of the Convergence Foundation. Let's have a huge round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashish, for making the time. And today, besides talking about social change and capital and how it plays, we're really going to drill down and double-click on one of the stalwarts on the Indian private equity scene, and also somebody who is making great social change through his commitment and his work on policy and education. So Ashish, you brought in the first private equity firm, Chris Capital, to this country. You led it to great success. And then you switched gear. You switched gear to founding India's first liberal arts university that is now one of the top universities in the country, Ashoka University. What transformed? What inspired you to do that?
Yeah, so, I started Chris Capital when I was 30 years old. I was very young. That's about 27 years ago. And I had this idea in my head that, I should have a career of service as well, beyond making money. And so I was very lucky that thanks to private equity being a very lucrative business, that I did well in my 30s and 40s. And then I decided at 43 that it was the right time to make the switch. We had already raised 5 funds by then. We raised our 6th fund. And then, by then I had a good team, everything was in place. And so I felt my duty was done, and it was the right opportunity to make the switch.
Was there a defining moment where you picked education as the cause?
Yeah, I picked education for 2 reasons. One is I've always believed that education is fundamental to transforming a society, to developing an economy. It is intergenerational, it changes lives. So education is the bedrock of human development. Second reason is very personal. My maternal grandfather had met Madame Montessori, and he was in Lahore. And he started the Lahore Montessori School, and then started a second school in Lahore. And of course, after partition, had to come to India, so had to leave his schools behind. He got into real estate as a business, but he had a social venture, and he called his schools La Montessori Schools, and he set up 50 of them in NCR, but for lower middle income people. He didn't want to make money from his schools. And as a child, I remember visiting these schools, and it had a big impact on me because I could see these children, coming to these schools, their lives changing. So therefore, there was a very personal reason also to get involved with education.
So we should be crediting your genes and not your passion?
Yeah, I would say, somewhere your ancestors shape you.
That is true. They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So looking back, the shift from private equity, what were some of the skills that you could easily leverage in one, getting the founding group together, and 10 years later, getting it to the point you were the first founding chairman of the board at Ashoka? How did you bring it all together? Founders, investors, the first set of parents, students, big task.
So I'm actually glad that I had a career in the for-profit world or in private equity because, I had global exposure, I was an entrepreneur, etc. So when I came into the social sector and when we thought of Ashoka University, the first thing is I think being somebody who had global, I'd been to Yale undergrad myself, is that our vision was not to just build another university. Our vision was, can we build an Ivy League quality university in India? We know it's going to take a long time, but at least at the outset, let's be ambitious. And let's, not look to do something that's an also-ran, but look to build something world-class in 30, 40 years. Second is, we recognize that doing it alone was going to be difficult. And I'm so glad that Anita was one of the initial group of people that came together to set this up. If you look at all the great universities in the world, the top 200, all of them are not-for-profit, every single one of them, because no great academic wants to work for a for-profit university. No leading star in academia. And two is, if you're going to focus on research, you're going to plow back whatever money you can even make on the teaching side back into research. If you want the best students, you will have to offer financial aid, scholarships as well. So that's why I think universities have stayed non-profit. Also, the hallmark of all great universities is there's no one family that owns it or drives it. John Harvard may have his name on Harvard, and Yale was set up by Elihu Yale, who actually sent money from Madras, from Chennai, to the US, money he'd made through the East India Company. But none of his family members is involved with Yale, none of John Harvard's family members are involved with Yale. Universities are one where the governance structure is such that your alumni or leading public figures are the ones who become trustees of institutions. And that's how they perpetuate for hundreds of years. Oxford and Cambridge have been around 800 years, and Harvard's been around 400 years almost. So we said that we must do the same in India also, is that it should be non-profit. No one person, Sanjeev Bikhchandani, who's also an entrepreneur, and I put in the initial capital to buy the land and all that. But we were very clear from the beginning that each of us would have only one vote on the board. And we would pull in others who are like-minded, and it would be a shared governance model, shared between the founders, shared with faculty as well, and with the people who run the institution. So that's the basis on which we got started.
And I have to say that you've stuck with that ethos. And today I feel very honored, Arjun and I, to be part of this journey right from get-go. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So, when we talk of scale, one thing I noticed was just your tenacity, quick thinking in the boardroom, but more importantly, your ability to connect with people. In private equity, scale is all about investments, capital, analysis, and in a school and in a venture like starting a university, it's about building trust. It's about carrying everybody forward. How did that transformation feel, from that cutthroat private equity side to corralling us? I saw it firsthand, but I want to hear how you felt about it.
No, thanks. So I think firstly, being strategic is important. I think it's important to know where you're going to allocate your capital or place your bets or where you have a chance of winning. So that's important. Two is, I think in private equity, you always believe that, look, at the end of the day, you back people. So when we decided to start science at Ashoka, we found Vijay Raghavan. Vijay was the principal scientific advisor to Government of India, had been the DBT secretary, had been the director of the National Center for Biological Sciences, NCBS, which is the premier biological sciences institute in the country. And so we chased Vijay for a few years, and the day he retired, we got him on board. Anurag Agarwal, who had led IGIB, which is India's top genomics institute, we chased him for 3 years and then finally convinced him to leave, to step down. When we were setting up computer science, Subhashish, who was at IIT Delhi, we got him to, he was the head of department at IIT Delhi, we got him to switch. And then 2 other of his colleagues from IIT Delhi also moved over. So people is at the core of it. You know, it's about identifying talent globally. So whether it's a professor at Stanford or Harvard or IIT, and how do you convince them to move is very critical. And I think a third thing is with universities, you know, you have to be an ecosystem player. You're not doing it on your own. Anyway, we're non-profit. We want 100 flowers to bloom. So I think being able to connect with others, whether it's having partnerships with international universities, but also with domestic institutions, I think is very important as well. So there is a human side to it in addition to the strategic thinking and all of that.
I'm going to kind of take a little digression here because you talk about the human side. I saw a lot of that, and yet in one of the interviews that you gave, you said, I don't think I'm really a very empathetic person. Double click.
No, by that I mean that I don't lead with emotion. I think I still start from thinking with the head that, you know, what do we really want to do? What is our 10-year vision, 20-year vision? What's our 5-year goal, 1-year goal? Who are the people we need to put in place? I'm analytical, but I do realize that at the end of the day, you know, making change is about getting many people on board, whether it's the team internally, whether it's academics who sometimes have worked in a public institution who, when they come to a private institution, need to be inspired to think much bigger. Because they've been, honestly, they're great people, but they've been operating with both hands tied behind their backs. And you have to feel like you're almost liberating them. And dealing with academics requires a certain different kind of empathy, you know, to work with them. Then, for instance, we have founders. So Ashoka is non-profit. We have almost 225 founders, almost 300 donors to the institution. 4,500 crore raised in philanthropic capital, which is the largest for any project in India. So to do that, you know, you have to engage the founders. They need to feel that they are involved in building the institution as well. And our ambition is not to stop here. We want to be, you know, double this in the next 5 years. So I think to do that, you have to reach out to people, convince them that they are going to play a role in building this institution. But also it's a larger role in nation building that you're performing by building not just one institution, but an institution that will inspire others as well.
So you talk about the larger role. Was that what made you pivot and start Central Square Foundation and 15 foundations under that and focus really on policy?
Yeah, so I think that I'm not about just building one thing. I think whatever we do should have a broader impact. So I think that with universities, what's interesting is even if you build one university, you can drive change because universities are not parochial. They don't address a city or an area. They get talent from everywhere. I mean, our faculty mostly actually comes from the US and UK because they're Indians who've gone abroad for their PhD. Our students come from all over India. Actually, 30% come from the 5 southern states. We get applications from 40 countries outside India. So the student body is global and it's all over India. It's not parochial. It's not from a 5-10 kilometer radius. So it's from everywhere. So in that sense, you know, you have a ability to have salience at a national level, frankly, even international level. So I think the biggest impact of the IITs was not just its alumni, but the fact that when the IITs were set up, they made engineering prestigious. Every mother and father told their child ki ab engineering padho. What the IIMs did was they made management education prestigious. Nobody knew what MBA was as a degree in India till IIMs was set up. And then you see another 3,000 management institutes being set up, the way 8,000 engineering colleges have been set up. So I think what an Ashoka can do for higher education is to bring the idea of a multidisciplinary and holistic education to Indian higher ed, which is what NEP talks about. So Central Square Foundation is different, where we work in school education, and we said that the only way to get scale and impact at scale is to work with the government. I know it's very hard because government schools are not in good shape. If you look at the data on foundational learning, so children by the end of class 5, almost half the children have fallen behind, and they fall behind permanently. So, and most of them are in the government system because unfortunately, if you're from the lower economic strata, you're more likely to send your child to government school. But the public system has to improve if we want these children to have a future. You know, if half of India cannot be locked out of opportunity, it has to be given a chance. And so we said we have to work with state governments to try to make this happen. The first state we really worked with in a very serious way was Uttar Pradesh, because I must say the Chief Minister is a very dynamic leader, the current Chief Minister. And it's been 7 years working in UP, and in Uttar Pradesh, they have improved dramatically. Whether you look at the ASA results or the NAS results, NAS is the government survey, dramatic improvement in Uttar Pradesh. And subsequently, we started to work in other states. Then the Prime Minister made this a national mission called the Nipun Bharat Mission. And we now work in about 10 states, not in Rajasthan, but in 10 states working with state governments. So, and I believe now, thanks to the Prime Minister's push with Nipun Bharat, there is a real desire to improve primary schools in various states across India. So that gives me a lot of joy, but we've been working on the problem for about 10 years. I think we'll have to stay with it for the next 10, 15, 20 years, because these are complex problems. Education at scale is a slow-moving indicator. It's not like a vaccine that you develop and you can deploy and immunize every child in 2 years or 5 years. You need behavior change at the teacher level. You need systems to change if you want to drive change at scale.
Now, you also, the organization's doing a lot of research on the state of education, right? And so it seems like it's a very analytical approach to where you should be focusing policy change. And Rajasthan featured on one of those reports with the Aao Ab Ghar Mein Seekhein program. I know that we are in the state of Rajasthan, so maybe share some salient points, and is there a plan in the near future to do anything in Rajasthan?
No, not right now. So in school education, we decided that 10 states is a lot, and in 5 of those are focus states where we work across districts as well. So UP, honestly, we're very positive on, because leadership is very strong and very committed. There are some other states also like Haryana where we've seen very good success. And some states like Odisha now, with the new government coming in. Prior government also was committed, new government very committed to education. Some southern states like Telangana actually do very poor in education, but strong commitment from prior government, this government, drive change. So I think leadership is very committed to driving change in education in some states, less so in others. I won't comment on Rajasthan, but I don't think it's at the top, if you ask me. So unless there is political will, we are not interested, because honestly, we are a support function. You can't drive change unless there's a political commitment to drive change. We can bring the technical inputs, we can provide the project management team, you know, all of that stuff. We can build the data systems, the tools for them, but there has to be a real desire at the political level to want to drive change.
So what a change Ashoka has brought to also parents and families thinking about liberal arts education, because most people tend to think about it as history and political science, which it's not. And you know, you talked earlier about the data science school, and great program, computer science, so many science and STEM-related subjects being offered. Do you think at 10 years later, even though we've achieved a top ranking on the national side, do you feel like your vision, the 50-year vision, is now really on its road to getting fruition?
Look, I think universities take a long time to get built. So I do feel that it's been only 11 years. There is a strong brand recognition, at least, where across most schools in India, students, parents, counselors, teachers, principals are aware that this exists. Two is that we are starting to see that while a lot of our kids want to go abroad, and that is still continuing, I think the tide is starting to turn in a small way. I mean, we have had students turn down places like Amherst and Duke and McGill and LSE and Chicago to come to Ashoka. Now, I'm saying most of those who get into those places would still go, but at least it's starting to happen. And I think it's a slow journey. I think over the next 10 years, as better universities get built out of India, more students will want to stay back because they will be able to get a quality education in India. You're seeing the same happen in China. Actually, if you look at the numbers for China, the number of students going abroad, the number of students going to the US has been dipping for the last 5-6 years, partly because of the US not being as welcoming, but partly because if you look at the universities in China, they're extremely good today. Frankly, they're higher ranked than many of the universities in the US. So why bother going? And if you're going to spend your life living in China or living in India, then going to a home institution makes sense. So I think parents also are seeing this now. In terms of the liberal arts, I would say the liberal arts is more an ethos. It's more the idea that when you are 17, you may not exactly know what you want to study. So I think the idea of giving students a broad education is so that they have choice. They can decide they want to major, minor, they can switch. That's very important. Two is, I think the idea of a broad education makes you a more well-rounded individual. And if you want to be a leader in any sphere, being well-rounded is very important. Honestly, I went to undergrad to a liberal arts university. I may have majored in economics and applied math. My favorite courses were actually in history and international relations and Latin American studies and things like that. And they left some impression on me and made me a more worldly wise person. So I do think that, in an era where we don't know what jobs are going to look like 10 years from now, what the impact AI is going to have, etc., being a generalist at some level, you need some specialization, no doubt. Being a generalist, being connected to the humanities, I think, are going to become even more important in the next 10 years, and social sciences, because in an age of AI, at the end of the day, what makes us distinctive is our humanity, our connect with society, and our empathy is going to differentiate us. So I think studying, being well-rounded, and even if you're going to become an engineer or scientist or economist, having exposure to these other disciplines, I think, is very important.
Very well said. I think that at the end, AI is being trained by humans.
And I always say there's one AI that's more important than the AI everybody's excited about, which is ancient intelligence.
Yes.
The wisdom of the ages, and India has that in spades. Our civilization is one of the richest. So being able to go and look at our philosophy, our history, our literature, there's so much to learn from that, and particularly in a world that is going to be infused with technology, being able to manage yourself, being able to develop relationships with individuals, figure out the trajectory of your life. I think a lot of that wisdom comes from reading literature, philosophy, etc. And India has a lot to offer the world, that form of AI, which is ancient intelligence.
Well said. I can't help but ask if we are going to be offering Chinese in Ashoka.
We
now
do.
That, and how many students take that and actually apply to Chinese universities, since the US is not so welcoming?
So we do offer a minor in Chinese studies, and I think it's important because, look, China is a rising power, and we may, they will be a competitor. I mean, we obviously have smoother relations. So I think understanding them is really, really critical. Whether it's to learn from them, whether it's to even know how to combat them, it's very critical to understand their history, their philosophy, their economy, their geopolitics, etc. And therefore, the language also is critical. So we do offer language and also courses on all of these topics that I talked about, because I think understanding China is really critical for anybody who's going to be in a leadership position in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Great. We do the same in the US, but in a slightly different way. Maybe not as effective as what you are doing at Ashoka. But let's talk about, since we're talking about India and its rising power, India is one of the biggest assets that India has is its demography. It's a lot of young people, and I think the strong ethic of education. You know, whether you take it from the lowest to the most wealthiest, everybody wants their kids to have a good education. So how will this actually, how does this translate to employability? And is an Ashoka education improving your chances of employability? And then the second part of the question, as you brought up AI, is how will AI impact employability?
So firstly, I'm very bullish on India. I think we are going to be the rising power for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Our demographics not only is very positive, but I think we have a very strong reform orientation now. So firstly, India has grown 6.5% last 30 years. I don't see any reason why we can't grow even faster, given everything that's happened. We have better infrastructure today. Our talent is much smarter today. It has global exposure. Our policies are much better informed and more pro-business and pro-growth oriented today than they were 20, 30 years ago. So I think India is poised to do really well. I do believe in the Viksit Bharat agenda, that India really has the chance to become a developed nation in the next 25 years or by 2047. I think for that, obviously, human capital is very important, having human capital at scale, but also a number of things that government has now started to work on. Without a large manufacturing base, we need to be an industrial powerhouse. India hasn't been, and I think that's starting to happen. We need to deregulate. India is a tough place to do business. Any business, whether it's education or any industry, we got rid of license Raj, but we didn't get rid of Inspector Raj in India. In China, if you're looking to invest, they roll out the red carpet. In India, they offer you red tape instead. So I think we really need to deregulate, and that's a big push we're seeing from government now. So I think on a number of policy fronts now, India is starting to change. Maybe the US tariffs were good because they forced us to reform faster. Yeah, so I think to do that, our talent will need to really, you talked about AI. Of course, we need to lean into AI. We need to know how to use AI. We need to be technology, we have to leverage technology to the utmost. But I think India is somewhat more shielded than the Western world from AI impacting jobs, because we are still a very basic economy where lots of work is done by hands. And yes, there'll be some roboticization in factories, but given how cheap labor is, I think in India it'll take much longer for AI to have the impact that it'll have in the Western world.
And yet, I think the liberal arts education and that focus on humanities, as you mentioned earlier, is going to be very critical in understanding processes, workflows, and how they can be improved even before the AI starts to generate something meaningful. So I agree with you. I think AI is not here to take away our jobs for a long time. Even in the US, I don't think it's taking away mostly the back office kind of jobs and perhaps a little bit more impact on the services industry that was, the providers for all the outsourcing work. But let's maybe just switch gear about what would you offer as words of advice on what the students and the young folks in this room are looking for? What are the kinds of things that they should be focusing on in terms of skills development so that they can be more employable?
Look, I think that, as I was saying earlier, I think this is the golden moment for India. Frankly, I was born a little earlier, so I think the best is yet to come. So I think as a young person, I think firstly having belief in the future, having belief in yourself is very critical. Two is being entrepreneurial, I think is very important. I think many of you who are blessed to have a good education, to be in the place you're in, you should not just be happy doing a job, but at some point looking to do your own thing. Particularly if you're young, even if you fail in India, you will get a second chance. And in a growing economy, you can always go back into the workplace. So nothing should stop you. So I would be ambitious, I would be entrepreneurial, and have a mindset that's a can-do mindset. I know Narayan Murthy gets criticized a lot for saying that people should work hard, but I would reiterate that this is a phase in our country's development where all of us need to work really hard, for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Otherwise, we're not going to become a developed nation.
Thank you for that plug for entrepreneurship, because TiE is all about fostering entrepreneurship, and we've done that globally for 32 years, with Silicon Valley being the founding chapter. And now, we've got, India is definitely one of our largest numbers in terms of the number of people who show up at conferences like this. So thanks for that plug for entrepreneurship. But I think the young folks here are all very jazzed to hear from you. I think we need to be rounding up. And I'll have some rapid fire questions that some people have prompted. But before we ask those questions, we will open it up to a couple of questions. I see a hand being raised. Ashish, one word about your favorite book that really made an impression. Name of the book, how did it impact you?
Yeah, the book that had the biggest impression on me was Benjamin Franklin's autobiography. I read it when I was young. And, this is a man who ran a printing press in Philadelphia in the 1700s. And then decided to leave his printing press, and that's when his life really started. He did it at age 43, and then he was the inventor of the lightning rod. He's the founder of the University of Pennsylvania. He was the founder of the American Philosophical Society. He was the father of the US Constitution, yada, yada, yada. So this is a person who had multiple careers. So that idea got in my head that I don't want to just get stuck in the world of business. I want to have multiple careers in my life, and I was inspired by that book.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. You're definitely not stuck. You have been unstuck in so many different avatars. So thanks for being Ashish, and thanks for being in India and making all this difference. But I know you love to dance. So what's that song that gets you on the dance floor?
Lots of Bollywood songs, but I would say the one song is actually Rise Up. It's a very upbeat kind of song.
You want to sing that first sentence?
No, I'm a terrible singer.
Okay. One word of advice to an entrepreneur. Just one word. The first piece of advice to an entrepreneur.
Persistence. Just stay with it. Never, never give up.
Never give up. Great. And I hope that you will never give up. I know you won't, from whatever I know of you, Ashish, and I hope that you will keep transforming and picking up more social causes for the betterment of India. I can't agree with you more that the present government and this change towards Viksit Bharat and so many other initiatives across the country, we're all very hopeful as we watch India from afar. And all of us are deeply committed and we're very deeply committed to education, and thank you for being part of that journey and leading the way for all of us.
Thank you, Anita.
So before we end this, I would like to open it up to a couple of questions. Please.
Yeah, with everything Trump is doing, we don't know what the value of the $100 bill will be. But no, coming back, look, I think we do have a great heritage with Nalanda, Takshila, Vikramshila. India was the center of learning in a way where global scholars came and took that learning and took it back to their countries. So in a way, I do think that there can be a renaissance in India as well. I don't think one Ashoka can do it. I think we need many institutions. So I'm very glad that even our leading institutions, the IITs, Indian Institute of Science, are now looking at more multidisciplinary, holistic learning as well. IITs are no longer just focusing on technical. They're building departments of political science and economics, philosophy, all of that, which is a very good sign in my mind. And private institutions like Ashoka, yes, we've had our challenges, bumps in the road. But if you ask me, I think the overall climate in India is still quite positive. I think academic freedom is still there with, I would say, some guardrails. I mean, if you're going to write on Kashmir or on the China relationship, be clear that it's a national security issue and you should be careful. But we are not a China in terms of being as repressive on its academic. That's my belief, at least. So I think there's enough creativity, enough space for great institutions to flourish. And I do think we should aspire to have 20 universities in the top 200 by 2047. Very difficult, but at least that's the aspiration we should have.
There's a question at the back. I'll come. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Avin. So one of my takeaways from the session was when you mentioned at the outset the fact that your maternal grandfather had set up a whole cluster of schools in NCR region. So my precise question to you is, do you feel that it is not being done at a colossal level in contemporary India? These schools which are not set up for a profit motive, but schools which essentially cater to the lower strata of the society, is that being done at a colossal level across the country? And perhaps it's not being done. So what is your take on what should be done to plug in this vacuum, if you will? Thank you.
See, I have a bit of a contrarian view. I think, firstly, with schools or with education in India, I think we have a little bit of this farce where we say it needs to be non-profit. I think most schools, most universities, Ashoka is different. We've chosen to be non-profit because we want to be a research university. But most schools, most universities in India are for-profit. So why don't we recognize that and actually allow them to set up as companies and recognize that they're for-profit, legitimize it in a way. You know, what we have done with GST and other things in terms of moving the informal to the formal, I think the same needs to be done in education. Now, whether someone then in that for-profit model chooses to cater to upper income, middle income, lower middle income children, I think the way you have with any other market, in the marketplace, you have products that cater to different strata. The same will happen with education. But I think we should be much more, we should open the sector up for private sector to be much more free in this sector.
You had a question?
Yeah, look, our students coming out of the IITs are doing great. So I would say that when we say liberal arts, we mean people should just have a broader exposure. The education should be more holistic. And I don't think that's going to hurt anybody. So I think our entrepreneurs, to me, in a way, when our students who graduate from the IITs, they go to the US, going to the US is your liberal arts education because you're being put in an environment where you have to now learn to deal with the Chinese, to deal with the Americans, you have to learn, baseball and American football and, all of that. And so you have to just be much more open-minded and curious and learning all the time and learning about different things. And I think that's what, if we just make some tweaks, like I think the IITs are really solid. The kids are doing a great job in terms of entrepreneurship. They just got a slightly wider exposure. I think they can really play on the global stage, if you ask me. So that's what I mean by liberal arts. I think a lot of people misconstrue liberal arts to mean only studying humanities or fine arts. That's not the case. It's just the idea of a more holistic, multidisciplinary education.
And just, I just add that from a US perspective, where there is a lot of availability of liberal arts education, we have seen over the last 20 odd years that there's been this major shift actually away from STEM, which has hurt the country. And that is why we've got, so much diversity in our universities, because there aren't enough local students that are applying for those STEM degrees. And this is something that there's a lot more focus on encouraging students in school. And even though it's not that everybody has to be an AI engineer, but you have to have that basic critical thinking analysis, with logic and so on, that gets developed with disciplines like mathematics and science and things in the early stages. So I think that there is that balance, as you say. You can't be at one extreme or the other. And all of us who've had the opportunity to go overseas and study, yes, just going to a store and finding, 30 brands of close-up, which was my experience, or 30 flavors of close-up, where I was only used to one in India, was in itself an educational process. So with that, if there isn't another question, we will...
I have a question, please.
Please go ahead. I haven't seen the hand, yes.
Yeah, I'm Basant Khaitan. So it was a pleasure listening to you about supporting higher education and education of the poor who are being taken care of now. I have a question in terms of the economic side is being taken care of by normal children, and the other side of the question is, what about special children? Do you have an idea how that could be scaled up? Because it's very difficult to educate special children. But they are part of society, and they are not, I don't think there's a possibility that they can become part of economy, like IITs, etc. And there's no possibility of scaling up such schools. Do you have an idea, sir?
No, so I don't specifically work on special education, but I do believe that special education needs to be integrated into with schools, and already good schools are doing a great job with it. I also feel that, at the university level, we shouldn't assume that they can't get access to our best institutions. At Ashoka, we're very inclusive. We have a special center, learning support. We've had students who are 100% visually impaired, so completely blind, completely no sight, no hearing, physically handicapped, who've done incredibly well. So I think these children should be nurtured at school and even in higher education as well. It sometimes means creating some special facilities for them, but now with some additional assistive technology, these students can really flourish and not be left behind.
Thank you. With that, I want to thank you once again, Ashish, and for being here. It was really wonderful to have you as part of the other part of my life, which is TiE. And please do keep coming to TiE. I know that you have an entrepreneurship school at Ashoka, and we would love to find ways for the TiE chapters. And I have my fellow board member here, Alok Mittal, and he's right there in NCR, and you know Alok. So hopefully we can do something with the entrepreneurship school at Ashoka. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the insights, and I'll request you both to please stay back. And I'd request our moderator, Ms. Anita, to please felicitate our speaker as well. So I believe that true leadership is reflected not just in success, but it's the way you share your journey with others. And the way the entire journey was shared, I'm sure that all of us have got great insights of how the things move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a huge round of applause. As I always tell, that the way we clap, we just let them know, not in words, but through our actions, that how grateful we are for their presence and for all the insights they shared with us.